Welcome to See You on the Other Side, where the world of the mysterious collides with the world of entertainment. A discussion of art, music, movies, spirituality, the weird, and self-discovery. And now, your hosts, musicians and entertainers who have their own weakness for the weird, Mike and Wendy from the band Sunspot.
Brains.
Oh, I love brains. I love brains, and that brains are the topic of this week's episode, Wendy.
Whoa, what a weird coincidence.
Yes, it is a weird coincidence. We're talking about zombies today.
Yes.
And so, what do you think was the first zombie movie you ever saw, Wendy?
That I ever saw?
Yeah.
Oh. Well, I mean, I don't know if it counts as a movie, but I would probably say the Michael Jackson Thriller, like the extended video with the intro and everything like that.
Yeah, that's a good pick. When we were working on the show outline, I completely forgot about the Thriller video.
Mike.
I know.
Well, that's what I'm here for. Here to remind you about the awesome dancing zombies.
Yep, I believe that was Michael Jackson's greatest triumph.
It was the first record album that I ever owned, actually.
Thriller with the like him with the tiger. Remember, he's like slain by that tiger. You're like, what is this about?
Oh, I remember. Yep.
I remember. My parents let me stay up and watch the video as it was being premiered on
That's awesome.
Friday night videos. And I think my sister was having a sleepover. So I think Allison was having a sleepover. So like I got to come down and watch it. And she was like, why is Mike here? No, she wasn't that bad.
Funny.
She was sweet to me. She wasn't like,
Oh, gosh.
get out of here, you big jerk.
We all know how nice she is since she's been on the show so many times.
Yeah.
So you can't make her sound not nice.
At that point, she was nice. Earlier in my life, she had tortured me. She tickled me until I vomited. She was that kind of wonderful sister.
So sweet.
And that was the second probably zombie movie I ever saw. The first one.
And what was the first?
What was Night of the Living Dead?
Oh man, what a great way to get initiated.
Yeah, what a terrifying way to get initiated. Because I was like 6 years old, and and it's so ridiculous. The movie is so ridiculous. And we're going to talk more about Night of the Living Dead in the meat of the program.
Are we going to talk about when we visited the scene from there?
I completely forgot that too.
Oh my gosh, Mike.
I know.
Well, see, it's a good thing I'm here, even though I don't know. I might not know much, but I do remember.
You do remember
weird
us
things.
going to the actual cemetery where they
right.
filmed Night of the Living Dead. No, but it's funny. So that terrified me. And speaking of my sister, she was making fun of me because I was so scared. I was like 6 years old, and
Was she not scared?
No, she was 13, and she was watching it with my dad. And when you're coming at it, I mean, this is maybe 14 years after it came out. It's in black and white. It's an independent film, so the special effects are pants. If you're not coming at it from a very serious perspective, it is fairly ridiculous. So they weren't scared, but I was like captivated, and I was like, "Oh my God, zombies!" Like I was just terrified.
Well, it's funny how when you're a little kid
weeping.
and you see those movies, and even when they have the really cheesy effects, you're a child and your imagination is more vivid. So you're really caught up in it, and you see those things, and I had so many nightmares from that movie Pet Sematary.
Oh yeah, and you weren't even a little kid when Pet Sematary.
No, I was in like 7th grade or something.
Yeah, it came out in 89, 88, 89. I remember it. Yeah, it scared the crap out of me too. That's not weird. That was a scary one. That was a good scary movie.
I watched it at a sleepover with one of my friends, and it was for weeks I had nightmares about it. It was terrible.
Yeah.
And now I saw it on I think it was on over the air television as like a rerun at some point, and I'm like, that is so stupid looking. It's not scary at all.
Right. I mean, I've seen Night of the Living Dead like 30 times, like literally about 30 times since that original.
Wow.
thing, and it doesn't.
You really like it?
Yeah, I think it's a great movie. It's a good movie to study too, because it's such a low budget film, and it's a great idea, and the way the shots are done and everything, and the way the characters interact with each other. It's a good example of how you make a movie for like $28.
So I get a lot of screams per dollar.
Yes,
huh?
absolutely. Like with that one, it's like screams per penny. Like there's so many screams that they do it. So I always saw Night of the Living Dead to be a really valuable example. Plus, anybody can show it anytime, anywhere, because they screwed up and there's no copyright on Night of the Living Dead.
Oh man!
So people over the years have use
it for videos and things.
Yeah, they re-release it for things.
That's so cool.
You can legally take it, you can overdub it, you can screw around with it, and you can sell that. And
Wouldn't it be fun if everything was that way? Well, I mean, I guess I don't care that much about the selling part, but to be able to just take something and put your own creative twist on it, and
and just mess with it whenever you want, and
and not worry about lawsuits and
that's the magic of Creative Commons.
True, yeah, that's right.
And so that's one of the reasons that's fun. But
the time when we visited the scene, so the cemetery that we went to was from like one of the main scenes from that movie, right?
Yeah, the opening of the movie takes place. It's a sister and a brother, and they're going to visit the grave of their parents.
Oof.
And so that's when they get attacked by a zombie.
Okay.
And that's like the opening of the film.
And we happened to be in Pittsburgh, right?
Yep. Yeah, we were in Harmony, Pennsylvania, I believe, hanging out with one of our buddies.
Yeah, our friend Dave was like showing us the local scenes and drove us up there, and it was late at night. It was dark, and I gotta say, it was a pretty scary scene. I mean, I didn't see any zombies, but I would definitely not want to have been there alone.
No way. No, but I just thought it was great though that we got to see where they actually shot it, because George Romero, the guy that directs it, he's from Pittsburgh.
Okay.
So that's where you got to start and everything. And
cool.
We might as well get into Night of the Living Dead right now. We're already talking about
okay,
it.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
No,
I just wanted to make. we brought it up, so I wanted to mention it to everybody.
That's perfectly okay. I didn't even make any room for small talk this week. I was just like, zombies. What do you think?
That's okay. I opened up the show with
right. Zombies, fact or fiction? No, but there is. The thing is that what we think of as zombies was really created by George Romero.
Really?
Yeah. So in 1968, when Night of the Living Dead came out, that's
before.
No, what we think of as zombies. So when we talk about a movie, the zombie apocalypse, when we talk about the Night of the Living Dead, like he created those monsters specifically for his film.
Okay, but the concept of a zombie, I mean, like the whole voodoo culture and
right.
whatnot with.
Well, that's right, and
that existed before. He didn't just like wake up one day and go, "Hey."
No, he didn't. He did.
Dead people walking
and
again.
He did take a lot of the inspiration. In the 1950s, there was a book called I Am Legend by the great Richard Matheson.
The Will Smith movie?
If I could come through my computer and strangle you, I would. Welcome to Earth. No. Yes, they made a Will Smith movie called I Am Legend that was nothing like the book.
No Will Smith zombie?
No, I'm not going to spoil I Am Legend for you.
Okay, sorry. I'm taking us way off course.
If you haven't, but no, the thing is, I Am Legend is about one of the guys who's the last people alive on Earth.
Oh,
and
so
everybody else gets infected with this vampire virus. So it's a man who's surrounded by
on the run
by vampires, and he goes around during the day and he kills
like Zombieland.
Yeah, and he kills vampires during the day, and then at night he holes up in his house, and they all wait outside his house and they taunt him and they want to get in and everything. But he's got all of the vampire stuff.
Oh, man, that sounds exactly like Zombieland.
It is. I mean,
is that? Were we going to talk about that? Am I taking away the?
No, I wasn't even going to put Zombieland in there.
Oh, it's so good.
Zombieland's a great movie. There's no question.
Okay, but I Am Legend, so it's worth a read.
And I'm not going to spoil this, but even the term I Am Legend is important to the theme of the book. And the Will Smith movie completely turns that around to the Will Smith movie could be a cool movie on its own, but it shouldn't be called I Am Legend because they actually changed the meaning of the entire story.
Oh, man.
The entire story is different. So
okay.
I think the direction's pretty good. I think the action's pretty good. I think the special effects are great. They just shouldn't have called it that. They could have said influenced by, but it's just a completely different story.
They just happened to choose that title. It wasn't like loosely based on the book or anything like that at all. It's just,
They say it's a
like an interpretation or
of
like
the book. They actually say that
really?
This is based on the story, and it's like, well, it's kind of based on the story, but I have digressed to a point. Anyway, I Am Legend. Take the movie off it, change the character names, and you might have a pretty good something there.
Woo!
Welcome to Earth. Okay. So, but in 1964, they make a version of it called The Last Man on Earth, starring Vincent Price. And
I've heard of that.
A lot of the visual cues in Night of the Living Dead come from The Last Man on Earth. That movie, not the new show with Will Forte, which is actually a pretty funny show. Last Man on Earth is creative, it's funny, it's really different, and so I'm enjoying it. I watch it. And eventually they made it again in 1973 as Omega Man with Charlton Heston, which was a pretty good movie too. That one didn't hew as close to the book either, but at least it came a little closer to the spirit. And then there's Will Smith, his version.
Ooh.
Yeah. Right. But the thing is, that was a real big influence on Night of the Living Dead with these vampires, this lone man surrounded by vampires.
That's just a terrifying thought for anyone. I mean, who wants to be the last like normal human left with just monsters around you?
Nobody.
Just,
no, that's
right.
why it's scary. And
yeah.
And Night of the Living Dead, one of the reasons it scared the crap out of me was that there's no reason that it happens.
Oh gosh.
So they never give an explanation. And that was one thing, and you take science fiction and horror of the 1950s and all these alien invasion movies, like The War of the Worlds, or, any of the, what was the one with the pod people? Invasion of the Body Snatchers and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Invasion of the Body Snatchers has kind of a downbeat ending. Spoiler alert for a 51-year-old movie. But it kind of gives an explanation to why these things are happening. And if there's an explanation to it, that means it can be stopped. And in the 1950s, scientists were the good guys in the movies. They weren't the bad guys until later on.
Yeah.
So scientists would be like, I'm going to figure out a problem. And then the scientists would figure out a problem. They'd give it to the hero, and the hero would save the day. And in Night of the Living Dead, there is no solution. There is no cause. There is no solution. It's just like, you know what? Guess what? World's over. Humans lost.
Oh gosh.
And so that's why it always...
It's pretty depressing.
Yeah, and it was pretty depressing. And so that's one of the reasons it scared the crap out of me. And, we talk about the influences that George Romero had when he first worked on the script for Night of the Living Dead. That traditional, you mentioned the voodoo stuff, and that was a form of zombie, but the zombies in Night of the Living Dead are more like ghouls, which are an Arabic legend. And ghouls were like beings that hung around graveyards.
Yeah, I thought ghouls were kind of basically ghosts. Like, is that something different? Or
yes.
Ghosts and ghouls? Okay.
Yeah, so a ghoul is an evil genie.
Whoa.
And a genie is a child of, who was born from Iblis, who we talked about when we talked about the Yazidi, because Iblis is the Islamic devil. And so, there you go. So it's an Arabic folklore, and ghouls eat flesh. So they're evil genies that hang around graveyards and eat flesh.
Nom, 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 nom.
It's a sound, that sounds like, to me, that sounds like zombies. And then in European folklore, we had revenants. And revenants were reanimated corpses.
Oh, I've never heard that word before.
So a revenant is a corpse who comes back to life and keeps doing bad. It usually was somebody who did something bad in real life. So it's like a troublemaker, probably, in today's world, be a guy who's in and out of prison all the time.
So bad in life and bad in death.
Bad in life, that's exactly right. So what they were saying, a revenant, eventually they had to exhume the body and then cut his head off.
Oh.
Yeah, that's how they handled vampires. That's how they anytime like an affliction would happen to a town, they would look for some reason for it. Let's say a lot of people were dying. Let's say that the sheep were getting killed. I don't know. Whatever happens in a medieval town. Let's say the cheese goes bad.
Sure, they get the plague comes around, or like the locusts come and eat their crops or something.
Right. They needed something to blame it on, and they would blame it on revenants.
Bad people.
Yeah.
Bad.
And so they would blame it on these bad people that just came back. That's like, well, this person died, and now they're even more powerful because they're dead. So. Reanimated corpses in revenants, eating flesh, ghouls. Now, where does the actual zombies, where we get the term, come from? Well, that's Haitian voodoo folklore of a zombie was a reanimated corpse who was created by a bokor, which is a sorcerer, in a voodoo sorcerer. And the bokor, they're not strictly good, the Hungans, and they're not strictly bad. Bokor are sorcerers who they say work magic with both hands. And that means they do light magic and they do dark magic. And part of that dark magic is raising people from the dead and then controlling them as slaves.
Oh man, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That's really evil.
Yeah, right. So that's their slave like labor force is kind of what that's what their zombies that they dealt with. So that's like voodoo and Haiti. I mean, there was a movie called White Zombie in 1932, which is and again, this is 1932, so their racial their racial attitudes are not quite as how you say enlightened as ours today. So it's about a white woman going to Haiti who gets this plantation owner falls in love with her, has a sorcerer pretend that she's dead, bring her back to life, and so he can control her as his love slave. And that's an introduction to the. I mean, it starred Bela Lugosi, who a year before had starred in Dracula, so he's a big star at the time. And so White Zombie was kind of America's introduction to the concept of killing somebody and bringing them back to life and making them your slave. And, white, like kind of, you used to talk about white slavery for human trafficking.
Yeah. Well, I remember learning about the Haitian, the voodoo thing back in French class when we studied that chapter. And one of the things that stuck with me was the zombie powder.
Ah, yes, tetrodotoxin.
Yes. So I always thought that was interesting because it's kind of a little bit of a sort of scientific thing to explain how this might have,
that's
started rumors or legends of people coming back from the dead. So the powder, what is it? It actually paralyzes them, and they look like they're dead, but they're not quite. So the family would bury them, and then they'd.
Well, now this is the controversial part. Not controversial to who? I don't know. Anybody that cares about zombies. Okay, so now you're getting into the serpent and the rainbow.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I skipped ahead.
That's okay. That's okay. We're talking about Haiti. We're talking about
zombie powder is just. Zombie powder is just such a cool, it sounds cool.
Yeah, I'm going to give you some zombie powder, but what you're really doing is giving somebody roofies that eventually you take them over. So that's, it takes away their mind control, but it freezes their body or something. Okay.
Go ahead. I'm
Serpent
sorry.
and the Rainbow. There's a guy named Wade Davis. And Wade Davis he's a Canadian scientist, and he starts studying these stories that he heard. Now, he was embedded with various tribes in South America, and he's getting to know natives and everything, and he hears these stories about Haitian zombies. Specifically, let me find the specific story here is a good one, about a guy named Clairvius Narcisse. Now, in 1962, he died. He was given a funeral and was buried in front of his family. And then in 1980, he wandered back into his own village. He said that there was a voodoo sorcerer that used the zombie powder on him and put him into a coma that made him look like he died. So he can still feel everything, he can still hear everything. It's just that your body gets slowed down to such an extent.
Okay, so it's almost like a deep coma like state.
And then if they don't really have great medical facilities there, then it looks like you're dead. Okay, and so they also say that you lose enough oxygen that it causes a little bit of brain damage and everything, and that's why when they wake up completely disoriented, they think they're under the spell of the Bokor, the sorcerer.
Wow.
So Clairvius said that he worked on a plantation with other zombies for years. And then the sorcerer died, the plantation owner died, and he said he regained enough of his consciousness where it occurred to him that he should leave the plantation and go somewhere else. and then he wandered around for a while and eventually made his way back to his hometown. So that's I mean, his is the story of the real zombie story. So
he survived the poisoning or whatever, and but he was living like a zombie.
Mm-hmm. And so Wade Davis went down there to study it. And he talked to Clairvius and everything, and then released a book about it called The Serpent and the Rainbow in the early 1980s. And it's the zombie powder, he says, is a combination of tetrodotoxin and bufotenin, chemicals derived from the venom of the puffer fish. So, fish, and they get all big and they got spines and stuff like that. So chemicals from the puffer fish and from a toad. And when they give those things to a human, things look like death. And they eventually made a movie about that. And so this is a different, Serpent and the Rainbow is a different kind of zombie movie. It's made by Wes Craven, and he did Nightmare on Elm Street, Last House on the Left. He did some really classic horror movies. And Serpent and the Rainbow stars Bill Pullman, who, to bring it back to Will Smith in Independence Day, he's the president in Independence Day. Bill Pullman is the president. And so in The Serpent and the Rainbow is a fictionalized version of that story. That movie is the fictionalized version of that story. It's got a Harvard scientist being sent by people in the anesthesia industry to go down to Haiti in the middle of their really rebellious period, because they had a dictator in place in the 1970s, and it was all about he goes down there, falls in love with the voodoo sorcerer's daughter. He's got a spirit animal, and he sees a spirit animal at just the right size. It's like a mixture of magic and science, and it's a really great movie.
That sounds really cool, actually.
I remember being maybe 12 years old or 11 years old when I saw the trailer, and it's got Bill Pullman, and it looks like he's about to be buried, and he just says, "Don't let them bury me. I'm not dead."
Whoa.
And it scared the crap out of me. Like, that was just, imagine. Yeah. And then I saw the movie, and the movie's really scary. It's really good. And, it's not like in the 80s, a lot of horror was gory, serial killer, slasher movies, and some of them were pretty cool, but The Serpent and the Rainbow is more of a psychological, mystical,
And those can be even more terrifying than the gory ones.
Right. And then the good priest is played by Paul Winfield, who's he's an actor I always really liked. My favorite role of his was there was a TV show called The Charmings, where before Once Upon a Time, it was about, let's say, Snow White and Prince Charming living in modern-day Los Angeles.
Okay.
And they lived with his mother-in-law, and his mother-in-law was evil. Like Snow White's mother was evil.
Okay.
So he lives with the mother-in-law, and the mother-in-law is always talking to the mirror, asking the mirror, mirror, mirror on the wall. And then Paul Winfield is the mirror, and he's sarcastic and he's funny. And anyway, so he's a character I always like, an actor I always liked. And then he's the good priest in The Serpent and the Rainbow. And if you guys haven't seen that one, I believe it's on Netflix. So that's the one you can check out right away. And that's more of a realistic, quote unquote, but that's based on the story of Wade Davis, who studied Clairvius narcissi and who studied this zombie powder.
And so the actual real world version of what the movie Zombies, I guess.
Yeah,
the closest thing we have that we know of.
Right. Well, that's the thing, and we'll get to that. We'll talk about, because people really wonder if a zombie apocalypse could happen. And, well, we'll get there.
Let's hope not.
Right. Well, the thing is, so the zombie as a, we were talking a little bit before about Night of the Living Dead and the scary parts about it. They never gave a reason. There is no solving this crisis. And the Walking Dead TV show is like that too. So the Walking Dead there's no way to fix this. There's no way for it to get better. There's zombies, and that's it. And this is a new condition we're going to have to live with.
That's not depressing.
No. But George Romero's original movies, they all have a particular kind of social commentary to them. And it's really like people I think they overemphasize the importance of this in his movies, and they also make it a little more overblown. Like George Romero does a great job, and these are really cool aspects of his movies, but they're all heavy-handed and not subtle at all. Like a lot of Night of the Living Dead is about racism because, and parts of it are about racism. Part of it just because he had a black guy as the lead character, which in 1968...
Yeah, that's not...
Right, that didn't happen a lot.
Too common.
And that was a cool thing. And it's his interaction. And they never bring race into it, actually, with his interaction with the other characters. But that is something to it. And so, people talk about that aspect of Night of the Living Dead. Dawn of the Dead takes place in a mall, and the zombies are walking through the mall. And that's the idea that it's some kind of criticism of consumer culture that, like, you will be punished. Right, like, for
your materialism.
Right, you're materialistic. You walk into the mall and you're just buying crap you don't need, and you're doing it
mindlessly. Right.
And you kind of get that in the movie, but then you also kind of get, it's awesome when a helicopter blade cuts a zombie's head off.
Right, and a mall is such a great place for a scene, too, because there's just so many different things in a mall where stuff could happen,
Yeah, you can hole up in there,
Yeah, exactly. You got a whole food court.
Yeah.
You got options.
Yeah, and then Day of the Dead, that's about 10 years. That happens about 10 years after Dawn of the Dead. That takes place on a military base, and that kind of satirizes militarism. Like the real villain of the film isn't the zombies; it's a military captain in the film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, kind of like in Avatar.
Yeah, that. And so, but you'd say like, okay, so what do the zombies have to deal with there? Well, it's following orders and not questioning them like a zombie. And then Land of the Dead, made 20 years after that, is about income inequality. And this Land of the Dead has some cool kill shots in it. It's got some cool scenes. But the income inequality symbolism in it isn't, like, it's just so latent. It's too obvious. And, like, they still have money in there. They still talk. People are still worried about money after the zombie apocalypse in that movie. And it's like, how are you worried about money?
Okay.
There are zombies eating people's flesh.
Right.
You're just trying to keep this world together.
The only thing you should worry about is staying alive.
Right. You're worried about, that this backed with the full faith and credit of the United States government. There is no United States government. Everybody's dead. Who cares about money? But... And then after that, he made some more movies, which I've seen, and they're horrible. So don't worry about any social satire or anything there, because either he needs some money or he needs a new scriptwriter to kind of enliven his career, I think.
I see. Okay. Well, he did have a good run, so...
He did have a good run. And
better than most.
Night, Dawn, and Day of the Dead are all, classic films. And he's made some other classic films, too. He made some Stephen King adaptations. And so George is fine. He's a credit to Pittsburgh. It's just his new zombie movies aren't any good. But he provided the template for what we call the zombie apocalypse. That this is the end of the world. Like, have you ever seen Shaun of the Dead?
No.
Okay. Shaun of the Dead is a great movie. Simon Pegg, super funny, English, so keep your ears open because the jokes come fast and they don't all make sense to American ears, but it's great. Shaun of the Dead's a classic movie. And, but it kind of resolves itself. It's not the end of the world. It's not the apocalypse, and that's kind of, these Dead movies are so terrifying. And I think that's one of the reasons people are super fascinated with them. Because it's a world that will never come back from.
Yeah, right.
And also zombies, you can probably, it's not that hard to kill them. Like, you just need a shot to the brain or like something, and they're slow moving and everything. But when there's a lot of them, they'll take you out.
You don't stand a chance.
Right. And so
don't even try.
That's why people were so bothered when you got fast zombies.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Zombies that run. And that kind of, like, they introduced that in these movies called Return of the Living Dead. And Return of the Living Dead were these, like, tongue-in-cheek comedy horror zombie movies of the 1980s. And they're good. They're pretty funny. And that's where we get the whole concept of zombies looking for brains. Right? So in the other zombie movies in George Romero, they just want to eat your flesh. They'll eat your arm, they'll eat anything. In the Return of the Living Dead movies, that's where, like, brains. That's where they start talking about brains, like, I smell your brains. And they're also kind of intelligent. Like in the Return of the Living Dead movies, they're funny. Like
Right.
there's a scene where you have the zombie picking up the transmitter in like a cop car or whatever, and he's just like, send more cops. That's the whole. I mean, that it all,
I do remember that.
Yeah, so that all comes from the Return of the Living Dead and their desire for brains, and that kind of eked its way into our social consciousness from there. So now we think of zombies eating brains instead of just your flesh. And then they were fast in those movies. They made a film called 28 Days Later, where the zombies, they call it the rage virus, takes over the United Kingdom. And they're fast zombies too, because they're not reanimated corpses. They're people who are, just, they want to bite you and they want to spread the virus. Now, this is where we get to how a zombie apocalypse could really happen.
Wait, what? No.
Right. Okay.
Nope. If they attack, it's just they're gonna all be dancing in formation,
Right.
just like in Thriller.
That's what we'd hope.
And I'm gonna join them.
There you go. And you're hopefully that's how they won't know that you're not a zombie.
Right. Exactly. They won't try to eat my brains because.
Well, that's the whole thing. The virus, because the virus wants to spread, and so but can a virus control our minds? Can it make us do things we wouldn't want to do? Well, maybe not a virus, but a brain parasite could. Okay. A brain parasite like what? Well, there is a fungus called Ophia cordyceps, commonly known as zombie ant fungi. So when the ants get infected by the zombie ant fungi, they can manipulate the behavior of the ant. They release chemicals that control the ant's brain. So it makes the ant bite into a certain kind of leaf where the ant will, where the fungus can reproduce better. So it controls the behavior of the ant, and that's why they call them zombie ants. And this fungus can do it. And it's not just ants. So you're like, well, an ant's an insect. Well, let's talk about mammals. All right. And this is actually a pretty interesting, this is actually one of my favorite fungus. No, or brain parasite.
One of them.
Toxoplasmosa is a certain kind of parasite that reproduces inside of cats' bodies. In fact, that's the only place they reproduce inside of cats' bodies. Okay? But what they can do is when they infect a rat, they know that cats eat rats. They will make the rats run towards the cats.
Oh my gosh.
So that the rats get eaten.
No.
So that the rats get eaten.
All right, that's
and
amazing.
then they reproduce inside the cats.
That's amazing.
So, yeah, there's a parasite that can force you to actually do that crazy kind of behavior and kill yourself. And it happens in mammals. Now, I'm not saying that it can happen in humans because actually, like 50% of all humans actually have toxoplasma.
Okay.
We have this brain parasite. Actually, because that parasite can be found in like cat urine and like the litter boxes and stuff. So no, they say pregnant women should not be handling litter boxes. And that's because of this parasite, because if you're pregnant and your immune system is more vulnerable than at other times, then it can have an effect on humans. Otherwise, if your immune system is fine, toxoplasma won't do anything to you. But a couple interesting things about toxoplasma. All right. Number one, it's a theory of why we domesticated cats, why we love cats, why people spend time with cats. Well, yeah. 50% of humans are dog people, 50% are cat people, right? Well, what if the cat people have toxoplasma? And so they need to spend more time around the cats, just like the rats. Now, that's obviously no science behind that right there. There's no science behind that. No. But you have a brain parasite that could be a reason that we love cats.
If it's really that smart.
Okay. Well, it's smart or evolved or... The the thing is, there was a study done at Charles University in Prague, and psychological questionnaires to people infected with toxoplasma. Those infected, he found, show a small but statistically significant tendency to be more insecure and self-reproaching than those who don't. Paradoxically, infected women, on average, tend to be more outgoing and warm-hearted, while infected men tend to be more jealous and suspicious.
Strange.
So this is, he found statistic significance, which, that's meaningful, but it needs to be repeated.
Right.
But there is something to it. Okay. And so there's more work done. This one done in the Stanley Medical Institute in Bethesda, Maryland. This scientist had noticed that pregnant women with high levels of toxoplasma antibodies in their blood were more likely to give birth to children who would later develop schizophrenia. So they raised human cells in a petri dish and infected them with this toxoplasma. Then they dosed the cells with a variety of drugs used to treat schizophrenia. Several of the drugs, most notably haloperidol, blocked the growth of the parasite. So, could brain parasites make us crazy? Yeah.
Well, I don't see why not.
Yes. They can they can control rats' behavior and make them suicidal.
That level of that makes it sound like it's I don't know, smarter than it probably actually is.
Right.
But
no, I don't think it's intelligent. But can these things? They get into this and they affect behavior, and if they can latch on to the right part of the brain to make you go towards a cat. Oh, cats! I love cats. That's great. I don't know if I love cats. Well, now you do. It makes rats run towards cats. It's freaky.
Yeah, definitely freaky.
And so,
can't deny.
I think that's the best argument that a zombie apocalypse could really happen. And but what I think is funny about this though is the CDC actually did a whole campaign for preparedness using the zombie apocalypse.
Oh, that's right.
Okay, and it was a whole reason of how to be prepared. And it's the same kind of stuff. Like if there was a some kind of outbreak of something, stay inside. Remember 10 years ago when they had this preparedness kit for a terrorist invasion, a terrorist attack?
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
The Homeland Security said, here's things you should have at home. And it was stuff like duct tape. And my mom she made a home terrorism preparedness kit. And she was like, well, we got to make sure that, you have a home preparedness kit. And I'm like, thanks, Mom. I appreciate that.
Hey, you know what? That's a mom who loves you.
Yes, it is a mom who loves me. But the CDC made a whole graphic novel about this, about the zombie pandemic, and the CDC people are like the heroes in it. It's great. It's good. This is your tax dollars at work. But that's the whole idea of, and the CDC actually features in The Walking Dead. And it's actually one of the most grim places at The Walking Dead, because they go there and the guy at the CDC is like, there's no cure. We're all going to die. So
yeah, that's terrifying.
So the CDC is probably like, oh my God, the most popular show on cable is having us being like these downers.
Right.
We should probably release something. And also use that. Because it is important.
Because it gets people's attention.
If a zombie apocalypse happened, everybody's like, well, you just need weapons and stuff like that. Well, yeah, but also you need the basic things to survive. And, if you didn't have, so Wendy, just saying, where you live, how close are you? How close are you to food if you didn't have any food in the house?
It's maybe a 5-minute walk.
Okay, so you're 5 minutes away, and what
to Target?
And what about when your neighbors have looted all of that?
Yeah, that's the thing. Technically, I guess I could just go next door and steal food from somebody, but
right,
I'm not that kind of girl.
Of course not. But desperate times call for desperate measures.
Right.
Well, we've already seen, in riots in the United States and things like that, when the
New Orleans.
Yeah, when the grid goes dark.
Yeah.
What's going to happen? And that's one of these things about these zombie movies too, is they're The Walking Dead eventually becomes the bad guys aren't really the zombies, because zombies are mindless. There's no parrots. They don't talk about a virus or anything. There's no reason in The Walking Dead either. But the zombies are mindless, automatons that just eat things. They're not crafty. Yeah. They're not clever. Mm-hmm. The real people you have to worry about the real enemy you have to worry about are people. Because people are clever and they're mean and they'll kill you and they're selfish.
And when they get desperate, yeah.
And they'll do things to you. So I mean, that this whole CDC, like, we'll put a link to this CDC graphic novel so everybody can enjoy it. But it's just about all the things. It's like what you would do in a quarantine. You know, it's like staying indoors. It's, you know, having all this stuff ready at home. It's, you know, watching who you hang out with and all this kind of stuff. And so our Centers for Disease Control absolutely use that to try and get some attention out for emergency preparedness.
Nice.
So, I mean, there's some other kind of stuff that people think could be a reason that a zombie apocalypse could happen. Like some of it's mad cow disease, you know, and we all know, like, mad cow disease just makes cows go bonkers. You know, the bovine spongiform encephalopathy, which is, I mean, mad cow is that's a lot easier to say.
Oh, yeah, definitely, I'll say.
Right. And, you know, remember that, I mean, the whole thing happened in the UK, and they had to kill, like, millions of their cattle. Like, that was just a complete tragedy. And it can be transmitted to human beings, and it's just a neurodegenerative disease. Same like that chronic wasting disease. Remember we had to do that in Wisconsin?
Yep.
Like, did they kill all the deer in Wisconsin that had chronic wasting disease?
Terrible.
And you couldn't eat anything or anything like that because you could get it?
Right.
So, I mean, these diseases, like, you know, some of the websites that say, like, oh, real ways that a zombie apocalypse could happen. Well, yes. I mean, there are neurodegenerative diseases that can make you do stupid things and act crazy and all that kind of everything. But they don't make you eat people. You know, one of my favorite stories in the past not my favorite stories, I'm acting like this is happy news, but it's bath salts. You remember bath salts?
Oh, yeah. Right. Sort of. It was like people were using them as a drug or something.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, they were calling this special kind of methamphetamine. You know, like they called it Blue Sky on,
Okay.
they call all the stuff in Breaking Bad Blue Sky. Well, they were calling it bath salts. And it was supposed to be a really potent methamphetamine. Kind of like there was an internet meme going around a couple of years ago about this Russian drug called crocodile, a certain kind of meth, and it was degenerate, they were showing these addicts with their skin ripped off and, like, you know, half of their arm gone. And it was just,
That's
you know,
nasty.
it was truly disgusting. And it was just meant to shock people and be like, watch out, because this is invading the United States. You know, if somebody says, hey, some Russian guy's like, hey, man, want to try crocodile? You have to say no. Say no right away or your arm will be completely gone.
Crocodile?
But bath salts was the same kind of thing. It's like, man, if somebody tries to offer you bath salts, this is really bad drug and you're not going to, you know, don't do it.
Yeah.
And that guy in Florida that was found eating another person's face.
Oh, that was, yeah, no.
And everybody said, and that's like a zombie. And everybody's like, oh my God, the zombie apocalypse is real. And everybody,
It's starting with him.
everybody called it bath salts.
Okay.
But it wasn't. It was cocaine psychosis. So it's just a guy that did way too much cocaine for way too long and ended up.
Drugs are bad. Okay.
Yeah, okay. And ended up eating some dude's face.
Mike, I can't believe I didn't think of this, but we were talking about zombie powder before.
Yes, we
and
were.
For some reason, I didn't, until just now, remember that there's a really tasty beer called Zombie Dust.
Oh,
have you ever had it?
No, I don't think I've had zombie dust.
It's Three Floyds Brewing makes it.
Okay, well,
And-
it goes on my list.
Yeah, the description is an intensely hopped and gushing undead pale ale will be one's only respite after the zombie apocalypse.
Ooh.
So apparently you should have some on hand just in case like things get dire. But I've tasted it and it's good. So I thought it was a cool name and it's got a neat label with like a scary looking dude on it.
I think that sounds good. I've had the Zombie Hunter,
Oh, I haven't heard of that.
and that is that's another fine beer.
I mean, it's just funny how our culture is so, zombies are such a like widespread popular kind of thing that it's like beers are named after zombies, you
Right.
know?
Well, and actually in 2014, there was this this beer called Dock Street, and Dock Street made something called the Dock Street Walker, and it supposedly has brains. So
Wait, what? Come again?
yeah, so Dock Street's based in Philadelphia, and it uses smoked goat brains in it.
Nasty.
So yeah, so that's, you can have, your zombie beer can have real goat brains in it.
All right, and then you're like a zombie because you're eating brain or drinking brains.
Right, and so that's So that's what they're kind of doing. So you can try the Walker from Dock Street Brewing.
We planned really poorly because we probably should have had these beers on hand so we could
we should be drinking
consume
them
them.
right now. We should be drinking them right now.
While we're talking about zombies, but that's okay. Maybe next time.
Well, one last thing before we get to our song for the week. And so that's just a little bit of the science for everybody behind how a zombie apocalypse could really happen, where zombies came from in the beginning, our legends about them and our ideas about them, and also what you can do in case a zombie apocalypse does happen.
That's right.
Number one, obviously we know hit him in the brains. And second, make sure you have your duct tape. Okay, so this comes from a place I used to work, WKBT in La Crosse, Wisconsin.
Okay.
So I was the morning news director there for a couple of years, where I had to wake up at 3:30 in the morning every day. But I did meet some very nice people, and I enjoyed working with them. But that was a tough job, and I'll never wake up early again. But this is a little story from February 13th, 2013. A goof up by some La Crosse disc jockeys caused WKB TV viewers to hear a warning of a zombie attack.
Awesome.
The message went out shortly after 7:30 a.m. Tuesday when the hosts of the Z93 morning show were joking about how hackers broke into the emergency alert system of a Montana TV station Monday and sent out the bogus warning. Well, Z93 is the prime station in the local emergency network, and when they played a tape of the hoax, the alert tones triggered WKBT News Channel 8's receiver, which automatically rebroadcast the
that's
signal.
Hilarious.
Viewers heard the message, which warned of dead bodies rising from their graves in several Montana counties and attacking the living, as well as the local DJ's laughter.
How terrifying if you actually heard that.
So
It's like War of the Worlds, but
right,
the zombie version.
Except the TV station wasn't in on the joke.
Yeah, right. It's just automatic. Well, there's the argument for not automating everything.
Right, so it automatically goes on. So WKBT rebroadcasted that there was a zombie apocalypse to the scared people of La Crosse. And, I mean, La Crosse people have enough reason to be scared of with the Smiley Face Murder Club operating on the Mississippi River.
Gosh. Yep.
But that is for a different
Another episode.
day. All right.
Well, this is a good time to remind everybody that links to the stuff we talked about are available on our website, which is
othersidepodcast.com/38.
Yes. And also, if you enjoy the show, if you'd be so kind as to go on iTunes and leave a nice review, that would help us a lot for getting more exposure for the show and getting more people listening and getting more conversation going on the weird stuff that we talk about.
Absolutely. And find us on Twitter at OtherSideTalk. And you can find our band on Twitter, which is the music that you're about to hear, at Sunspot Music.
Yes. So say hello, and we'd love to hear from you. And thank you for listening.
All right. This track is a throwback to the Misfits, and this is for one of our friends who's working on a web series right now about a zombie family. This track's called I Was a Teenage Zombie. I was a teenage zombie, 13, rocket birthday. Other kids like sports, I wanted brains. And now the song is family. Hey man, don't lose your head. It's the night before, the day after the dawn of the living dead. I'm on the cover of Bango. I'm in the grand
for listening to today's episode. You can find us online at othersidepodcast.com. Until next time, see you on the other side.
Woo! Woo!
Welcome to Earth. Yeah.